Who's doing this? May we have order in the Senate? Who yields time? The senator from Kentucky. Senators?
I rise in support of clean air, clean water, electricity, and jobs. We need to, if we're going to maintain our economy, discontinue and not overreach with job-killing regulations. We are asking for the continuation of the existing regulations.
Senators, please take your conversations out of the well of the Senate.
This amendment would allow for the continuation of the existing regulations. If you look at EPA versus North Carolina, it says remand without vacating the order. The other side claims that we're for no regulations. We are asking for the continuation of the existing regulations on pollution. The rules are working, but if we keep increasing the burden, we are going to cause increased joblessness. I reserve the remainder of my time.
The senator from California.
Madam President, can we have order?
The senator from California.
Madam President, we still don't have order.
The Senate will stand in order.
Madam President, I hope colleagues will take a moment to look at this picture, because this is what we're talking about. Exhaling toxic air and little kids and members of our families who have to use this kind of inhaler. Exhale, inhale. This is a poster done by the American Lung Association. Every public health group respected opposes the Paul resolution. If your neighbor dumped toxic garbage on your front lawn that would harm your families, you would do two things. One, you would say clean it up, and two, you'd say never do it again. That's all the rule does that Senator Paul is trying to eviscerate here. Vote no for jobs, for clean air, for our families, and 67% of the American people, including 68% of independents, who oppose
the senator's time has expired.
Who oppose the Paul resolution, please vote no.
Madam President.
The senator from Kentucky.
There are emotions and there are facts. The facts are that emissions have been declining for 6 decades. The current rules are working. If you vote for increased regulations, you're voting to kill jobs. We want the
senator's time has expired. The ayes and nays are ordered. On the motion to proceed to S.J. Res. 27, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Baucus. Mr. Beckidge, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Dement, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. No Way, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Carey, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson, Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Blunt, Bozeman, Burr, Chambliss, Coates, Coburn, Cochran, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, Dement, Enzi, Graham, Grassley, Hatch, Heller, Hoeven, Hutchison, Inhofe, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kyle, Lee, Lugar, Manchin, McConnell, Moran, Murkowski, Nelson of Nebraska, Paul, Portman, Roberts, Rubio, Shelby, Thune, Toomey, Vitter, and Wicker. Senators voting in the negative: Akaka, Alexander, Ayotte, Baucus, Bekich, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Boxer, Brown of Massachusetts, Brown of Ohio, Cantwell, Cardin, Carper, Casey, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Hagan, Harkin, Johnson of South Dakota, Kerry, Kirk, Klobuchar, Cole, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Leahy, Levin, McCaskill, Menendez, Merkley, Mikulski, Murray, Nelson of Florida, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen, Snow, Stabenow, Tester, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Webb, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Mr. Lieberman, no. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Risch, aye.
Are there any senators wishing to vote or to change their vote? The ayes are 41, the nays are 56. The motion to proceed is not agreed to. Without objection. The senator from California.
First of all, I want to say a big thank you to colleagues for voting to defeat the Paul resolution, which was a real attack on the health of our families. I ask unanimous consent that from Thursday, November 10th through Monday, November 14th, the Majority Leader be authorized to sign duly enrolled bills or joint resolutions.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.
And, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business until 1:30, with the time equally divided between the two leaders or their designees, and with senators permitted to speak up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection. The senator from South Carolina.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to speak for a few minutes about the proposed Veterans Tax Credit. I know what I'm about to discuss won't make me very popular. I'll probably be accused of not supporting veterans by the politicians pandering for their votes. But I'm not going to be intimidated into voting for something that may make sense politically, but is inherently unfair, and it isn't going to work. The measure the Senate is now considering at President Obama's urging is to offer tax credits to employers who hire unemployed veterans. It might sound like good politics, but it's not good policy. We've learned over the past few years since President Obama took office that employers hire based on their long-term plans, not short-term stimulus. It costs an employer about $63,000 a year to create an average private sector job. A new tax credit for a couple of $1,000s is simply not enough to increase employment. We have to recognize the fact that businesses are not going to hire until the government gets out of their way and creates a stable environment where businesses can thrive. Let's be clear. I want veterans to have work opportunities. Once a man or woman has completed his or her service to our country, I hope they're welcomed into the job market. But veterans aren't hired simply because they're veterans. By and large, they demonstrate admirable qualities that are invaluable in the workforce, like selflessness, hard work, and dedication to improving oneself. And many other Americans who are suffering in this same bad economy, like single moms, young graduates, and minorities, also demonstrate these same commendable character traits. The best way to get our veterans back to work is by doing the things that will help the economy and get all Americans back to work. Sadly, this tax credit doesn't do that. The government has tried offering credits to hire particular categories of people many times before. The Government Accounting Office report studied targeted jobs tax credit that was passed back in 1978. The credit was intended to encourage companies to favor the disadvantaged in hiring. But a follow-up study found that it was not effective or economical in helping the targeted group. The program was eventually allowed to expire. But unfortunately, that tax credit was quickly replaced with the Welfare to Work and Work Opportunity Tax Credits in 1996. The Urban Institute Brookings Tax Policy Center studied these credits, which was intended to help the needy, low-income veterans, inner-city youth, and ex-felons. But it found that the credits had not had a meaningful effect on employment rates among the disadvantaged. President Obama signed another law, the Hiring Incentives to Restore Employment Act, in March of 2010 to give companies a tax credit to hire unemployed workers. There is no evidence that this encouraged employers to hire, as unemployment has remained stubbornly high since President Obama came into office, especially over the last year while this credit was available. Despite the overwhelming evidence that these tax credits do not stimulate hiring for targeted groups, the Obama administration continues to push Congress to pass another tax credit, this time exclusively for veterans. By using a politically sensitive group the day before Veterans Day, the Democrats are hoping they can trick Republicans into further complicating the tax code when we should be doing everything possible to simplify it. If we really want to help veterans and all Americans, we need to get serious about fixing our economy. There are almost 14 million unemployed Americans and another 10 million underemployed and discouraged workers who need work. We need a simpler tax code that businesses can navigate, not a more complicated one riddled with incentives for employers to hire one particular group over another. The endless morass of tax credits and loopholes is exactly what is wrong with our tax code. We should also repeal Obamacare and Dodd-Frank, which are proven job killers. We'll have a chance to vote on that later today. We need to open more domestic energy resources. The answers are right in front of our face, but instead we're pandering to different political groups with programs that have proven to be ineffective. We're giving more false promises to Americans in order to benefit political ends. All Americans deserve the same opportunity to get hired. I cannot support this tax credit because I do not believe the government should privilege one American over another when it comes to work. I'm deeply thankful for the courageous and selfless service of our veterans. They have performed for our country a service that we will always be in their debt for, or we're indebted to them. Let me just put it that way. And above all, I am thankful for their sacrifices to protect freedom and equal opportunity in America. But we don't pay them back for their service and sacrifice with false promises of government programs that have proven not to work. Let's be honest with our veterans and with all Americans and do what we need to do to fix this economy. Thank you, Madam President. I yield back. Note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
ask that proceedings under the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Madam President, I rise today on the eve of Veterans Day to speak on behalf of those who have fought for our country only to return home to find that their fight must continue. This time, their fight for a job, for employment. I rise today to offer my support on the floor for the Vow to Hire Heroes Act, which I believe is now before this body. I am a co-sponsor of this bill, Madam President, because as a nation, we must do more to appreciate, to support the service of our returning heroes, and to help them to fully recover from their service abroad by returning to meaningful employment in the civilian sector. We haven't had as many service members coming home from military service abroad in a long time. And unfortunately, so many of them come home to a bitterly slow recovery from the Great Recession. The unemployment rate among all veterans from service in Iraq or Afghanistan is now 30% higher than the national unemployment rate. It's at roughly 12.1%, and that means nearly 250,000 veterans unemployed. This bill is about equipping them effectively to return home to full employment. We have a tremendous asset, Mr. President, in the highly trained, highly skilled, highly motivated veterans that we have deployed overseas in the service of freedom and who are now returning home seeking service in employment with America's businesses. We're talking about men and women who are real leaders, tested leaders who've learned something useful about managing people through some of the most difficult situations imaginable. Folks in whom we invest hundreds of millions of dollars every year, year in and year out, in training them and in equipping them, billions of dollars in equipping them to the highest service levels when we send them overseas. We should invest comparably in making sure that that training, that equipment, is relevant as they return home. This summer, Mr. President, I hosted a roundtable in Delaware on veterans' jobs. 19 participants came from a wide range of sectors, from the military, from labor, from businesses, from all sorts of different civilian support organizations who work with our returned veterans. And as we had a long and productive conversation, the message was loud and clear. We can and should incentivize private businesses to hire veterans. We can help connect the private sector, these businesses across America, with veterans whom they want to hire. And we can and should do a better job of helping returning veterans transition to civilian services. In Delaware and across the country, we've had some great programs in the past. Helmets to hard hats, for example, one with which I became familiar in my previous service in county government, that connected folks in the building trades who wanted to welcome into their ranks veterans returning from recent service with those who have served our country honorably overseas and are now home fighting for jobs. There's also the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, or ESGR, with which I regularly communicated as county executive and continue to offer my support as senator, that helps make sure that those who serve overseas in the Guard and Reserve know that their employers understand and respect their legal obligations and their moral obligations to provide employment opportunities comparable to those they had before they deployed. We also had participating in this important conversation this summer Delaware companies that have made a public pledge to hiring veterans. Summit Aviation of Middletown, J.P. Morgan Chase, with a very large presence in Delaware, that's made a very real and sustained commitment to hiring returning veterans. We have a jobs crisis in America, Mr. President, and today Delaware's veterans' unemployment rate is 8%. And while that's good compared to the national average, 8% shouldn't be a good number. And in my view, this Congress could have no higher priority than helping Americans get back to work, and in that priority, helping America's veterans get back to work. The bill we are on today is the fourth major jobs bill, full of ideas, many of which originally came from the other side of the aisle, for job creation that we've introduced and considered, the American Jobs Act, a bill that would put public safety workers and teachers back to work and sustain their public service role, a bill that would invest in the infrastructure bank and public dollars for infrastructure all over this country, and all of these bills, Mr. President, have been blocked, not defeated, but blocked, prevented through filibuster from even coming to the floor. If ever there was a jobs bill that has earned bipartisan support, it's the one this body will vote on later today. Today, we have an opportunity to make it easier for our veterans to find jobs. And I am encouraged by very real signs that this bill may pass, so that all of us can go home tomorrow to our states, participate in Veterans Day ceremonies, having voted for a bill designed to help so many of America's servicemen and women ease their path back to full employment in the civilian economy. I believe we owe them nothing less. This bill, Mr. President, offers tax credits to businesses in the private sector who would hire veterans. It guarantees service members access to training designed to facilitate their transition to civilian life, and allow them full use of the skills they have gained in service to our nation. And it cuts through some of the bureaucratic red tape that's made it difficult for veterans to get access to federal resources. I am proud, Mr. President, to be a co-sponsor of this bill, just as I was proud to co-sponsor with Senator Murray of Washington the Hiring Heroes Act this spring. We owe it to America to work more aggressively, together, across the aisle in confronting this ongoing jobs crisis, and I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of the Vow to Hire Heroes Act today. If I can, Mr. President, I'd also like to take just another few minutes to discuss a bill that I hope will pass the Senate later today on a similar topic. It is a small bill addressing a complicated issue, but it'll make a big difference in the lives of many of our service members. When an American marries a foreign national, an immigrant, and that immigrant decides that he or she wants to become an American citizen, they begin a process of obtaining permanent residency, of applying for and seeking a green card. Just before the 2-year mark in that process, the couple must fill out a form together and appear for an in-person interview. You have a 90-day window to file that paperwork and another 90 days to appear for this in-person interview together. Here's the problem, Mr. President. What if you're in the military and deployed abroad? What if the American in this couple is in a war zone and cannot make it back to the United States in that limited, tightly defined 90-day window for an in-person interview? You might miss your opportunity for you and your spouse to have the interview and secure his or her green card in this United States. Our soldiers, in my view, have enough to worry about without adding this to the list. The bill we will offer later today is a simple fix, Mr. President. My colleague, Senator Graham of South Carolina, and I have introduced a bill that Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren introduced in the House earlier this year that would give our service members the flexibility to wait until after their deployments have concluded in order to conduct these in-person interviews. That measure, Mr. President, passed the House of Representatives 426-0. It is my hope it will also pass this Senate unanimously tonight. Mr. President, we are blessed in this nation to be served by volunteers, by men and women who stand up and go to the other side of the world to serve us in the interests of freedom. The two bills I've spoken of here on the floor today are things that we can and should do together across the aisle to advance their interests in having the enjoyment of liberty for which they've sacrificed so much. Thank you, and with that, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that at the conclusion of the remarks from the Senator from West Virginia, Senator Manchin, and the Senator from Indiana, Senator Coates, that I be recognized as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Senator from West Virginia.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak about a very real problem, making sure that we do everything that we can to protect jobs, safeguard our environment, and make sure utility companies can provide reliable and affordable electricity from our domestic resources. There are two EPA rules that are at the heart of this issue. One is the Utility MAC rule, which would require a decrease in mercury emissions at power plants, and the Cross-State Air Pollution Rule, which would require power plants to lower emissions of pollutants that may reduce air quality in neighboring states. Some utilities have already complied with these rules, but many haven't. You can put the blame for the past sins on anybody and everybody, and we seem to do it well here from time to time. This is not what we're here today. My good colleague and my friend from Indiana will be speaking after me, and this is truly a bipartisan effort trying to bring reasonability and common sense to this subject. But we've proven here in this body time and again that you truly can't fix it if you blame people for it. What we intend to do with our legislation is truly fix the problem. And let me be clear. I believe that both of these rules aim to accomplish important objectives. But as they're written, they're nearly impossible to realize. If we don't extend the deadline for utilities to responsibly comply, we're going to lose the jobs and the reliability of the electricity that we depend upon. And that hike of rates to consumers will be unimaginable. So, Mr. President, we need to find a balance with our economy and the environment. That's why I'm proud to stand up today with my friend, Senator Coates, a Republican from Indiana, to offer a common-sense solution to this problem and to move forward with responsible, reasonable legislation that would get plants in compliance. We are offering a bill today which is called the Fair Compliance Act of 2011 that has broad support from labor and industry and across the aisle. It's rare for so many groups with different points of view to come together behind a bill, but let me give you a list of some of our supporters. The Building and Construction Trades, International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, United Mine Workers of America, AES, American Electric Power, Interfab, the Electric Reliability Coordinating Council, just to name a few. I believe that this bill provides a reasonable, responsible extension of the deadlines while also protecting our most important priorities, our environment and our responsibility to the environment, the reliability of our electric grid, the consumers who have to buy energy and can only afford to pay a reasonable price, using our own domestic resources so that we depend less on foreign energy, and most importantly, the thousands of jobs that are on the line. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor to my friend from Indiana.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Indiana.
Mr. President, I thank my colleague, Senator Manchin from West Virginia, for joining together to produce a bipartisan, supported by both industry and labor, piece of legislation that will ensure that the provisions established through the Clean Air Act relative to the emissions of sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, mercury, and other emissions will be reduced and eliminated. We do nothing to stop the progress that has been made over many, many years in regards to cleaning up our air. We should be proud as Americans that we have taken the steps necessary to produce cleaner environments, to eliminate toxic pollutants in the air. Over $100 billion has been spent by industry to retrofit their energy-producing plants with equipment which reduces and eliminates these pollutants. So we are not here today to advocate in favor of pumping more toxins into the air. We're here today to say we need a reasonable provision in place that would allow these industries to continue to spend the billions of dollars which they're spending and do it in a timely manner so that we can reach the goal established through the Clean Air Act and other regulations. But this current regulation, which we had a vote on in the Paul Amendment just less than an hour ago, which came close to passing but failed, I think, by just 5 votes, now sets the stage for this particular provision, which the Senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, and I have co-sponsored. The Fair Compliance Act simply says that we want to continue to meet those standards, but we need to do it in a time-sensitive way so that industry can comply with the necessary procedures to arrange the plans, to hire the contractors, to install the equipment. The timeline proposed by the EPA is simply unattainable. It's unreasonable. It's punitive. It costs jobs. It costs money. And furthermore, it prevents these necessary energy-producing facilities in the United States, which is critical to our manufacturing base and critical to our economy and to employment, to allow this to play out over an extended period of time. Now, I say extended period of time. We're talking about an extension of 2 years on one of the provisions and 3 years on the other so that they can do these together. So for those who have advocated and indicated on this floor in previous debate that we are undermining and undercutting and stopping regulations from going forward and reduction of contaminants in the air, that is absolutely incorrect. What we're doing is ensuring that these will take place in a reasonable way which won't cost us jobs and won't further harm our economy. So just to repeat something and to ask my colleague from West Virginia, my understanding is that this has significant labor and industry support. And my colleague has outlined a number of industries and a number of labor unions that have supported this. I know there's some concern that the utilities have avoided these rules in the past. That has been alleged, although they have spent over $100 billion in compliance. And some say this is another delay tactic. I asked my colleague, what would you say to people who object to this legislation on those grounds?
Mr. President.
The Senator from West Virginia.
Senator Coates, let me say that that question has been out there, and the naysayers and saying, well, we shouldn't delay it any longer, or we shouldn't extend it anymore. This has gone through a real storied past, if you will. It had been repealed by a previous administration. It had gone through a court system, been overturned, and we're back where we are. and they're going to say, well, some of them complied, some haven't, and there's enough ample time. We can sit here, you and I have talked, and we've watched for the last year the blame game. It doesn't work. We haven't fixed a thing in this body this year by blaming the other side or blaming a previous administration or any partisan group. We have a chance with what you and I have teamed up with to fix this. And the only thing I would say, you so eloquently laid out, is 2 years extension on one to comply, not just to extend and forgive. We're not asking to reduce any way possible or amend the Clean Air Act. We want the Clean Air Act enforced. And we want to be able to do it with the energy that we have used for the last century. It's domestic. It's a fossil fuel. We've cleaned up the air in West Virginia by putting scrubbers and SCRs on boilers at the tune of 89% within the last 2 decades. And we can do a lot more. What we're allowing right now is to bring plants into compliance and without throwing a shock to the system. And the shock is this, sir. The cost, if I may quote you, even by EPA's own estimate, they've pegged the cost that if this rule is not extended so that we can comply, it will cost $2.4 billion. $2.4 billion. Who do you think is going to pay that? It'll be your consumers, your constituents, and most importantly, the people who probably can't afford it. It's putting a burden on. It's challenging every job that's depending on having reliable, affordable, and dependable energy, that they can compete globally. It's knocking us out of the market to compete. And why would we shoot ourselves in the foot economically? We can fix it. We can work within the Clean Air Act and comply with it, and it doesn't make any of these rules less stringent. We're not saying relax it. We're just saying let us comply. Don't blame what happened in the past. Let's fix what's before us right now. So that's what I would say to my dear friend.
Mr. President.
If I may ask my dear friend, what have you heard from the utilities in Indiana about the EPA's current timeline? What have they told you? And if you could share that with us, I'd appreciate it, sir.
Well, I thank my friend for asking.
Senator from Indiana.
Thank my friend for asking that question, and I thank him so much for his answer to the previous question. I have visited those utilities. Let me just state one. Tanner's Creek down along the Ohio River is a facility that will have to immediately close under this proposal at the cost of 60 jobs. There will have to be a movement toward constructing new facilities, which will be very costly and not done on a timely basis to make up for the loss of electricity that will flow into the grid, potentially causing blackouts or interruptions in electric supply. They are good citizens. They have plans to deal with their plants to comply with these regulations, but they need more time to do it. They've also said there's a shortage of, if we have to do this immediately with all the plants all across the country, there's a shortage of equipment and contractors that are able to manufacture this type of equipment necessary and install that kind of equipment. And that will drive up costs, and as the senator from West Virginia has said, all of this is borne on the backs of the taxpayer. The utility, those who receive utility bills, whether it's for their residences or those companies that receive utility bills that are producing, as I said earlier, in the Midwest and Senator State and my state, we make big stuff. We make cars, and we make locomotives, and we make major airplane parts, and we make big machines. This is the industrial heart of America. And so it takes a lot of energy to produce the kind of product that is made in our states. And to have a sudden spike in utility costs at a time when our economy is struggling is the worst thing that we could do in this economy. And so while this amendment is not designed to specifically address that issue, it certainly helps us as we work our way through a downturn in the economy that has kept a lot of people out of work and kept our economy from growing as it should, And this is just another blow to the manufacturing industry in the Midwest, particularly in terms of hiring, but also in terms of being competitive and making product. So the industries have come forward and said, we will comply. We have complied. $100 billion plus compliance record to date will be continued as we go forward. We're simply asking for a sensible time frame with which to do this. So just in conclusion, and I'll turn it back to my friend for his conclusion, to my colleagues, I simply say the allegations that this undermines what we're trying to do relative to providing clean air for American citizens to breathe is just totally exaggerated and not true. Our bill requires compliance with the Clean Air Act, and it does not take away any regulation relative to these emissions that are poured into the air out of our utilities. It is a bipartisan bill. This is not something that divides us on a partisan basis. A bipartisan bill. It has industry support and labor support. It ensures full compliance with the Clean Air Act and reduction levels through regulations. It ensures that we won't have energy disruptions and blackouts and grid problems. It keeps jobs. It spreads out the costs so that utility payers aren't just hit with a shock of an increase in their bills. And the time to do it is set in a way that it will be accomplished within a short period of time. It synchronizes the two emissions processes, the sulfur, the nitrous oxide, as well as the mercury and other toxins, so that they can do it at the same time. So we urge them to look at the details of the bill, to study this. I see no reason why those who are concerned just about the environment and those who might be concerned just about the production capacity can't come together in a reasonable compromise and achieve the ends that both want to meet. And with that, Mr. President, I will yield the floor. I'll turn it back to my colleague for whatever else he wants to conclude with. I thank him for his efforts in this whole process. We've been working together to do this in a way that both sides can support. With that, I yield the floor.
Let me just finish.
Senator from West Virginia.
I just want to say thank you to the senator from Indiana, my good friend Senator Coates, and for his diligence in working on this. We are both concerned. In the greatest nation on earth, not to have an energy policy is wrong. But it's also wrong to be so insecure, or less secure, if you will, by depending on foreign oil that we have. We know the results and what we're faced with now. What we're saying is let us comply. Let us make sure that we're working in harmony with the environment and economy. And we can make that happen within a reasonable amount of time. That's all we've asked for. We're not asking to make the rules less stringent or forget about the rules and throw caution to the wind. We know all the jobs that are at stake. We know the economy's at stake. We know basically the security of this nation's at stake. But until we find a fuel of the future, we need to use what we have right here in America. And this has been an energy. Coal has supplied energy for 100 years and will until we find the fuel that will replace it that's dependable, reliable, and affordable. So what we're asking for is something reasonable, and we're not blaming anything. With that, Mr. President, may I ask unanimous consent that the Reed for Tester Amendment number 927 be modified with the changes that are at the desk.
Objection. Do I hear any objection?
Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President.
The senator from Oklahoma.
Mr. President, it's my understanding I could have as much as 5 minutes now. It went a little bit longer than I thought. So I asked.
Without objection.
All right. You know, and I appreciate very, very much what has just been described. And I think people, perhaps it can be simplified to look at it in terms of the overregulation that we're doing in this country. The fact that there's a direct relationship between the amount of revenue that comes into government and the amount of regulations. And I've always used, in fact it's still permissible to use it according to OMB, for each 1% reduction or addition to the GDP, that creates an additional $50 billion of revenue. So there are other ways of doing it other than tax increases. Now, to turn around the other way, if you look at what this administration has done, they have such regulations, the greenhouse gas regulations would be somewhere between $300 and $400 billion lost in each year. The ozone, which they postponed, but nonetheless they proposed it, would be $676 billion in lost GDP. Now do your math on that for each $50 billion for each 1%, and 1%, by the way, is $140 billion. So for each 1%, it'd be about $50 billion loss in revenue. Boiler Mac, $1 billion lost in general in GDP. Utility Mac, that's what they've been talking about, and cross state lines, $140 billion in compliance costs. Cement Mac. So all of these are huge losers in terms of revenue that can be generated. So I would only like to say, and I wish I had time to get into more detail on this, shortly we'll be voting on the McCain Amendment number 928. It has a lot of great features in it, but one that's been almost overlooked is the feature that would take away the jurisdiction of the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate greenhouse gases. And this was the Upton-Inhofe bill. My bill actually was tested here, and we had a majority of people who are in support of it. It passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives. And what this part of this amendment does, it says that if you're going to do something like would have been done by the Waxman-Markey bill, it would cost us not just once, but every year between $300 and $400 billion. And so the big question was, in order for, since the President could not get this body to pass a bill on a cap and trade bill, he decided he would do it through regulation. And by doing it through regulation, it would still cost between $300 and $400 billion a year. So with that, they had to come up with an endangerment finding. And the endangerment finding was predicated on flawed science. In fact, we have a recent response to a request by the IG of the EPA that said, in fact, that was true, that the science that was on which this was based was flawed science. So what we are tried to do after we realized that, and everyone else realized it, is go back to these people who are on record opposing a legislation regulating greenhouse gases and try to get a bill passed that would take away the jurisdiction of the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate greenhouse gases. And that's what this is all about. Well, we're not able to get that up, but that provision is in the amendment number 928 by Senator McCain and others, and I hope that people will realize, in addition to those things that have been talked about in the new jobs that would come with the passage of that amendment, there is also this provision, which would also be a huge boost to our economy and eliminate a necessary tax increase of between $300 and $400 billion a year. With that, I'll yield the floor.
The Senate will resume consideration of H.R. 674, which the clerk will report.
Calendar number 212, H.R. 674, an act to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to repeal the imposition of 3% withholding on certain payments made to vendors by government entities and so forth and for other purposes.
There will be 15 minutes of debate, equally divided.
Mr. President.
Senator from Montana.
I want to thank you, Mr. President. The economy has hit us all hard. Montanans who have done everything right are losing their jobs, and some are even losing their homes. To get the economy back on track, we need to employ some common sense. We need to put politics aside, and we need to work together on behalf of the struggling families across this country. In particular, we need to do the right thing on behalf of our men and women who have served our nation in uniform. The unemployment rate for younger veterans who have served since September 11, 2001, continues to remain well above average. It is unacceptably high and is getting worse. It's a national disgrace. Our servicemen and women deserve better. These men and women left the comforts of home and put their lives on hold to fight for us in some of the harshest conditions imaginable. Far too many have paid the ultimate sacrifice, while thousands continue to struggle with the wounds of war, those seen and those unseen. They face daily challenges that many of us can never fully comprehend. and they have endured sacrifices that we can never fully repay. Many of them served multiple tours. Even the Montana National Guard's largest unit was sent to Iraq twice in the last 8 years. It's a long time, especially for a reserve component to be away from home. But they carried out their assignments as the best trained, most professional military in the world. And for that, we are proud and we are grateful. When I visited Iraq and Afghanistan earlier this year, I was protected by some of the most well-trained, professional, and downright inspirational men and women our country has ever produced. I recall in one instance standing at a command operating base looking out over a valley in Afghanistan where months earlier the Taliban had run roughshod. I thought how difficult the conditions were for the young men and women who were there wearing the uniform of our country, standing shoulder to shoulder with members of the Afghan army. In the hours we were there, I did not hear one complaint, only commitment and pride in their work from our troops. I'll never forget that. If we fail to do right by them, what does that say about us? Simply put, we have a responsibility to provide for all veterans and their families. It is something that I have never taken lightly, and it is something that continues to motivate me every single day. It means providing them with the best services and care that we can provide, and it means giving them every opportunity to succeed and empowering them with the tools that they need to find good-paying jobs. The legislation before us today does exactly that. It would provide important tax credits to encourage more employers to hire veterans who are out of work. It would provide additional education and job training for veterans to gain additional skills to be more successful in an increasingly competitive job market. And it would take important steps to help ease the transition between military service and the civilian workforce. Mr. President, let me give you an example of how this bill would directly affect one of my constituents. A chap by the name of Nathan Weens grew up in Glasgow, Montana, a small town in the northeastern corner of the state. He attended Montana State University on an ROTC scholarship, got a degree in civil engineering, and was deployed to Iraq as a captain in the Army. During his years in the Army, Nathan used his engineering degree, but when he came home, his military experience did not count towards his professional engineering certification. Now Nathan has to spend a couple of years building up the civilian equivalent of the military experience that he already has, just to be able to qualify to become a certified professional engineer. This bill will help fix it so that military experience counts. This bill says that if you spend 6 years in the Army driving a truck, you ought to be able to get your commercial driver's license a whole lot faster than someone who does not have that experience. It would require the Department of Labor, in conjunction with the VA and the Department of Defense, to take a hard look at what military skills and training should be translatable to the civilian sector. And it would make it easier to get these licenses and certifications that our veterans need. This bill will give employers valuable information about the skill sets our veterans have gained while they have served in the military. These are the kind of common sense ideas that we ought to be taking a look at. It is a responsible thing to do for America's veterans. And it won't surprise anyone that this proposal has ideas from both Democrats and Republicans, because this is an issue that shouldn't be partisan. Every member of the United States Senate should be committed to helping veterans find jobs. Montana has more veterans per capita than any other state in the Union except Alaska. We have 103,000 veterans in Montana, and as I travel across the state and visit with them and their families, the topic of veterans' employment remains at the forefront of their minds. It's important to them. It's important to their friends and loved ones. It's important to our communities. And it should be important to each and every one of us. We deal with a lot of contentious issues here, but this should not be one of them. Let's work together to do the right thing and get this bill passed, because it's the least we can do for those whom we owe so much. With that, Mr. President, I ask for the yeas and nays on this bill. On the amendment, I'm sorry.